Hey everyone, so today we have Tony Jefts, head of Topcoder. Now, quick question. Have you heard of Topcoder or crowdsourcing before? If not, that's okay. But the main reason for this episode is that when looking at AI and all these technologies that everyone is talking about right now, a very important principle is that what's old becomes new, what's new becomes old, and it keeps happening. Now, in the case of Topcoder, Topcoder is one of the first large, open future of work platforms that used crowdsourcing to accomplish challenges. So millions of people all over the world that were working as freelancers, or whatever you want to call it, to work on crazy challenges. And more than just the prizes, it was the intellectual stimulation, the fact that they could work on something that prior they would need access to, right? Or prior they would need to work for that company. Now, Topcoder has been around for 20 plus years, and Tony is the current one at the head. And the reason that I really want you to really dig deep into this episode is because a lot of the principles of what they've built over the past 20 years is what we need for the next 20 years. Now, one of the big things that we're seeing is what we call the bifurcation of the future of work. That just means there's two mutually exclusive directions of what's happening. One direction is high volume, low complexity. Think about data tagging, data labeling, everything that makes AI work at scale. The second direction is usually low volume, but very high complexity. That's the typical knowledge work, but more than just writing an article or more than just doing design. These worlds are starting to merge, meaning that the more as AI gets built out, the more that this low complexity, high complexity need to merge in a large, global, freelance, flexible, whatever you want to call this economy, in a large way. So I want you to really dig deep into what Tony and Topcoder has built over the past 20 years, what you can learn from it. And Tony himself has just been in this space for so long that we'd all be remiss if we didn't listen to every single second of this episode. All right, enjoy, then most importantly, go drive that change. Listen, Tony, thank you. This is years. How many years in the making? 5 years? 6 years in the making, maybe? And so this is going to be a blast. I think one of the themes that we're going to hit on is what's old is new, and the importance of reliability and trust and having a known model. And so Topcoder, you're not the new kid on the block. You know, you definitely have some years, which can be one of the best things. You are brand new to the idea of crowdsourcing and building better software development. You have some insane examples, which NASA and a lot of others. I don't know if I was allowed to say that publicly. I've seen it publicly on your stuff, so yeah. But listen, we are pumped to have you. Most important, tell our audience where you're located, and then we'll get into your background.
It's great to be here. Yeah, and it's been a little while in the making, but this is going to be fun. Yeah, so I'm based out of Rhode Island, Northeast UA, kind of sandwiched in between Boston and New York. I actually grew up as a New Yorker, but I'm a transplant into Rhode Island, and there's some history of Topcoder in the Northeast as well. So that's all part of the story.
Oh, yes. Can you tell our audience what a Narragansett Natty is?
What Narragansett Natty is?
Uh-huh.
I assume you're referring to the beer.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
It's the, depending on who you ask, it's either the best beer in the world or it's the cheapest beer in the world. And sometimes both.
Sometimes both. It is the PBR of Rhode Island, and I've learned that like every state I've lived besides San Francisco, every location, they each have their beers. So like Seattle, it was Rainier. It was so good and so cheap. And you all have Narragansett Natties. But listen, let's start this by just giving our audience an overview of you and you pre-Topcoder, you during Topcoder. Give us the life of Tony.
I'll do the abbreviated version to try to not talk about myself too much.
as the
But
typical
so
New Englander in you. You're
yes,
allowed to brag, Tony, and you're in Rhode Island, which is like all the Italians. So please be as
there's a lot.
loud and
There
braggy
are
as
a
you
lot
want.
of Italians in Rhode Island.
I know.
Yeah, so I'll start with yeah, so as I mentioned, I grew up in New York. I actually grew up on Long Island, and then went to school at Binghamton University, upstate New York. Got a computer science degree, and after that, went off into the working world. And my first real job, I would say, was actually at a consulting company named Talon. Had a couple names before that, but ultimately it was named Talon. That was really where I learned a lot. I was kind of thrown into the world of the dot-com boom and jumped right into client projects and gained a ton of experience in different technology stacks and different industries and different types of users and different types of customers. So wasn't necessarily doing what I would call product development yet, but definitely doing a lot of coding and building things on the fly, kind of taking brick and mortar businesses online. That was sort of the the theme of that stretch of years. So that was my growth period from about, I'll date myself here, from late 1998 ish into the early 2000s, probably 2003 is where I was there. So kind of coder, project manager, tech lead, account manager, kind of got all those roles out of my system. So from there, um, went off and did a couple independent projects, did some independent consulting, played around with some startups with some colleagues, and did a little bit of exploring. Ultimately, during that time, I kept in touch with the founder and some of the key people at that consulting company, who ultimately ended up being the founders of Topcoder. And they were building out Topcoder while I was kind of doing the startup things and whatnot. And to be honest, I didn't really understand what they were doing at the time. This was back in 2003, 4 time period, and they just kept talking about competitive programming and this arena thing and people all around the world and giving away a lot of prize money and big checks and that sort of stuff. And I kept in touch with them, but it didn't really click with me until one day I had the conversation with them, and they started talking about now taking this community of experts, highly rated people around the world that they've been able to compete or attract to compete in these coding competitions. They wanted to start to now think about how to bring that to market in a way that essentially competed with the consulting company that a bunch of us were at. So doing the same types of work, but doing it in a better way. Figuring out the challenges with finding talent, figuring out the challenges of overcoming quality, and always being, always struggling with timelines and cost and reliability. All those were concerns that Topcoder was really invented to try to address. So when I finally joined Topcoder, it was late 2004, and that conversation is what made it click with me. Is like, okay, now let's go try to figure out how to harness what you guys have been doing, which is really cool. And you've identified how to find talent and engage talent, and you've identified how to get them to complete these tasks in a merit-based way. Now, how do we take that and go build software, real software, right, in a commercial way for enterprise customers? That's what really excited me and got me pumped up about joining. And then from there, it's been 20 years of sort of an evolution of different roles of, first going out to client sites and managing projects and kind of figuring out our delivery model a little bit on the fly, to then taking over and building out the platform itself and doing a lot of the internal product development that ended up exposing a lot of the features on Topcoder that you see today, and kind of evolving the business as the times evolve, both from our clients' perspective and the way that work gets done perspective. And then ultimately got more and more into operational type roles. And now today I find myself lucky enough to be at the head of Topcoder. And Topcoder right now is situated within Wipro. Actually, Wipro acquired us in 2016. So we're basically an entity running within the overall construct of Wipro. So we get a bit of best of the both worlds in terms of having our own crowdsourcing platform that we get to continue to innovate and leverage for enterprise customers, along with the power of Wipro that complements the way that we're able to go to market and explore other areas that we may not have been able to get access to prior.
Nice.
So that was the long-winded version of it. I don't know if that's what you
Now
were
you gave
hoping
me now it's time for me to dig. So
for.
listen, one of the really interesting things. Also, did you know that Binghamton got this massive investment to their baseball field, like a $35 million? Did you know this?
Well, I know all of the really good sports things that happened at Binghamton happened after I graduated.
That's how it goes. But it's like so random, like out of the college baseball landscape, like usually only in the South fields are good. But then you go to Binghamton, you're like, this is world class. Some,
Yeah.
I don't know, random family dedicated a lot of money. But
Well, the Binghamton Mets actually, their farm team was up there. I don't know if they
yes,
still are, but they
they
were. So
are.
they had a
Oh, they
presence there.
are. So, okay, I want to dig into the fact that you are highly technical. You lived through the dot-com boom. We've seen a couple now waves of different technologies, and the massive buzzword right now is AI. And so, in the past 5 years, we have seen. I mean, listen, Human Cloud book was written in 2016 technically, and it was machine learning, neural networks, NLP, right? And so people are starting to get excited about that deep learning. But we've also seen like blockchain, NFTs, and some various hype things. So, what did you learn going through the dot-com bubble? And in terms of what we see now, were there any common things that sort of you learned that help you look at today and go, huh, this is an interesting, ways to look at the world? Because I'll be honest, Tony, I wasn't around during the dot-com boom. And so I wish I was. So I'm hoping to now take your knowledge.
Sure, make me feel old.
Sorry, man.
No,
Yeah.
that's a
Play
good question. Yeah, that's a good question. There's probably a few things. I'll take it from maybe two angles. One is that there's a consistent. But one thing that's consistent is that when I was doing the consulting work and we were working for customers and we were trying to solve their problems, we were doing that, right? They had particular problems of the time and they were trying to use the technology and tools available to solve those problems at the time. If I look in at today's world, Topcoder is doing very much the same thing, right? We're using technology and tools to solve customer problems. They are a different set of problems, and it's a different set of tools and a different set of technologies. But we're both focused on solving those end customer problems. So if we're not aligned with trying to figure out how to solve those problems and create value for customers, then none of it really works at the end of the day. So that's super important. The other maybe thread I'll pull out of that is, and you hear a lot about this more and more recently, and that is the way that work gets done. You have to keep evolving it. You have to keep changing it. I know you speak a lot about this with the future of work and how work gets done. And ultimately, you said earlier on what's old is new and what's new is old. The way I look at Topcoder is it was really founded on a lot of the principles about the future of work and changing the way that work gets done, innovating on the way that work gets done. It wasn't so much focused on what technology or what tools to use. It was focused on being adaptable so that you could continue to evolve to use whatever the best new tool or new technology is to solve those problems. So when you look at Topcoder, it spans the gamut across technology stacks, across verticals, across industries. It's not really zeroed in on any one of those end outcomes. It's focused on the ability to create outcomes. So when you now weave in AI and blockchain and whatever else it might be to that, you mentioned Topcoder's had some cool projects along the way, and yet we've been doing AI type projects before really people were talking about AI because we had access to the talent to do that, and we had the platform in place to enable people to work that way, to get access to the talent that could solve those problems. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of evolved with a lot of the same types of problems, just in a different space and focusing on the way that we work versus necessarily the particular tool set. I think has helped us evolve throughout the years. And then just in terms of AI and blockchain and cognitive and all that sort of stuff, it's definitely more and more part of our conversation today. And I guess the one difference with AI that I see is it's accelerating the way that we work. So it's not only a tool to help us build things for customers in different ways, it's also becoming a way that we need to think about what work looks like in the future and how we think about integrating and weaving AI into our own platform to enable the way that people work or to complement the way that people work. Right? You get into the conversations about, well, are you just building AI tools into your platform, or does AI become a problem solver, or is it a bit of both? And that's some of the conversations that we're having right now.
So can I double click on that? So this is where like,
Yeah.
because this is where what I find so interesting is, I talk with probably, oh man, between 10 and 20 platforms a week. And usually the AI conversation, my answer is, well, I don't know if I would trust you, even if you told me something super smart. And part of the reason is because, and maybe this is me starting in San Francisco and growing up in Boston, meaning like I feel like Boston gives you this rigid view of like, if you haven't already done it, shut up and do it and then talk about it, right? And then SF gives you this very technical view of, well, if you haven't majored in CS, then shut up and stop talking. But so I have both of those biases. But with you, I mean, you've seen the future of software development for 20 plus years now. You are actually technically literate with a CS major, and you aren't sitting on the sidelines or sitting in just a staffing company. You have your hands in what this world can be. So I just want to double click in like what do you actually see as AI, and is AI the right word, Tony, or should we just go back to saying automation or RPO or the various ones we talked about before? But like, please let me double click on your brain in terms of how you see AI and the future of technology.
It, yeah, that's an interesting point about, do we even call it that anymore, or is it really just another version of something that we already know? It's just amplified. So which I kind of like the way of looking at that. At the end of the day, it is trying to automate tasks, it's trying to accelerate things, it's trying to improve our ability to get work done. It's trying to reduce costs. It's trying to solve all the same types of problems. You can go down the checklist of things that it's already helping us do, and it will continue to help us do. And yeah, maybe it's just on a bigger or larger scale. I guess some of the ways I've been thinking about it recently, um, maybe just to talk a little bit about what types of problems it solves and where I'm at least in the relative short term thinking about it is, and this relates to the way that I think about crowd, and I think they're actually somewhat complementary in a lot of ways, crowd and AI. Because crowd was already an extension to me of a more efficient, a more scalable way to get work done, to get jobs done, to get problems solved. AI adds another layer to that. It's another way now that I can extend into this network and attach things um, to whatever I'm working on, attach things to it to get those problems solved or contribute to automation or speed or whatever it might be. So in many ways, I'm thinking about crowd plus AI in that way, as AI becomes almost an extension of the crowd or part of the crowd in some areas. But then when I double click into that and I think about, well, what's AI good at, or what should we be thinking about? I think this will change over time, because who knows where it really takes us, and it will continue to evolve very fast. But at least for now, one of the themes that I've sort of pulled out is that, and I've heard this from some really smart people, so I won't take full credit for it, but it gets me thinking about AI right now is really good at solving or presenting answers to problems that already exist where there's a known answer. So it can find sort of the average response. It can find the mean solution to something. So writing a piece of code that's to spec, right, is something that it can go do. And if you ask it to go, write something simple, it'll produce pretty good code and it'll work. If you ask it to answer a basic question about something that you need to do to repair something in your house, to do a plumbing fix or whatever it might be, it'll give you a response to that. What it doesn't really do yet, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this is happening and I'm just not tuned into it, but what it doesn't do yet is come up with those creative outlier solutions. And to me, that's where the crowd is still an integral piece of this. And part of Topcoder's model, it's really those two things, right? Topcoder is good at solving problems to spec, right? If you just need to build something, you can build it through crowdsourcing and competitive programming. And if you need to do something innovative, like those NASA matches that you mentioned, or it's finding some new medical, optimizing some medical procedure related to computer vision and imaging and AI and whatever it might be, you need to find those creative solutions that are outliers. The crowd is still really good at those, and AI is not able to produce those outlier solutions. So when I'm thinking about AI within the way that we work and where it takes us, those are some of the things that I'm pulling out, and some of the things that I'm using to sort of drive decisions that we're making with Topcoder.
Gotcha. So let's dig into the crowd, because part of, what's funny, Tony. So this past weekend, I was flying from London here back to the U.S., and so like 8-hour flight, right? And the Wi-Fi was pretty good. So I was like, you know what? Let's really test this out. So I went to Gemini and I was like, there's a couple of potential products we're thinking about shipping. Let's see just how good this works. And so I'll give you a hint. One product is real-time notifications of potentially buyer sentiment across LinkedIn and Twitter. And so if someone searches something that would make sense for, a flexible talent solution, then alert me. So, okay, that's how you would say it to a human. And then a product manager would take that and spec it out, and you would have, the full stack sort of tech stack and whatever. So I simply asked Gemini exactly like I told you. Now, it had a beautiful answer, but my thing was, well, can you go build it? Right? Like, can you go take the second mile delivery and actually build it? And so to me, I'm not going to lie, AI kind of feels like an annoying MBA student that acts like they'll do something, but like the reality is, please go do it or else like shut up. And so that is my feeling. And I'll give you a second example. Was as part of building a presentation, um, I needed to show that, okay, here's the carrot and here's the stick. And it was for a very enterprise facing audience. And so I said, hey, Gemini, please, and we've used all of them, right? But like, I'm not going to lie, Gemini is the one we usually gravitate towards. But I said, please draw me a picture of a corporate executive or an old man as a corporate executive in a corporate office about to hit me with a stick. And it spit out, I cannot do this because this is viewed as harmful. And all he wanted to be like, shut up. Now you sound like the HR manager. Right. So all this to say that, all right, like it is powerful, but I still want someone to execute, and I still need someone to just own it and do it and see what happens. But so now let's come to the crowd, because it's something that I first learned about. What was this, Tony? This was probably 2017. And my first reaction to it was, whoa, this sounds like chaos. How does this possibly work? And then I saw it and I went, whoa, okay, yep, all right, that makes sense why. And you can even explain to us like what happened with NASA, because that case study is just so freaking cool. But explain to us the crowd, as we now go on from going AI but into the crowd. Explain it to me like a third grader.
So crowds are all just like different. I'll explain the Topcoder crowd and maybe what's a bit unique about it. But all right, so in general, right, there's lots of crowdsourcing companies. There's lots of talent cloud, talent marketplaces. There's all different names for it. When Topcoder was created, it was really created as a community, right? So we didn't actually use the word crowd at first. It was created as a community because we wanted our members, our crowd, to feel like they were part of a community, and it was really that community that was at the center of the way that we viewed the universe, and that we still view the universe. I'll get real nostalgic. One of the quotes I remember from the founder, Jack. So Jack Hughes was the original founder of Topcoder. He reinforced that the community was at the center constantly, right? And he went as far as to look at it as sort of an inverted pyramid, where Topcoder, the company, sort of us as staff, are at the bottom of the pyramid, and we're there to support the community, and the community is there to support our customers. So the more that we think about enabling that community to provide value to the customer, which is ultimately the connection that we're trying to make, right? That community is providing value to that customer. So what's the most efficient way to do that? What's the most reliable way to do that? What's the simplest way to do that? So when I talk about, we focused a lot on the way that work gets done. It was about, and it is about, optimizing that connection for those two sides of the marketplace to create value in a transaction. And the transactions for us they're founded on this concept of competitive programming. So we talk a lot about challenges, right? So how do you get this crowd, this community of really smart people out in the world that have skills, all different types? How do you get them to work on specific problems that a customer has? And in our model, we actually applied a lot of discipline from manufacturing processes to the way that we execute work. So if you look at any of the work that flows through the Topcoder platform, it typically starts as some larger project, right? And all different size projects, but it's not just one challenge usually. It's usually some idea, right? It's, hey, I want to build this mobile app that does X, Y, Z. Or, hey, we have this modernization effort that we need to convert a whole bunch of legacy stuff into newer technologies. That work gets broken down into discrete pieces. And those discrete pieces are ultimately what the community works on in these challenges or tasks, or however we define that unit of work. And then every unit of work, if you look inside one of those challenges, they follow a very consistent, rigid structure. So there's a workflow, there's a consistent process for how people are able to register and what criteria there is. So there's a specific process on how they get access to requirements, specific process on how they're able to submit, specific process on how it's reviewed and scored, specific process on how the end result is packaged. So that's that manufacturing discipline where it's repeatable and we can constantly tune and tweak it so that if we see that we're not cost optimized, or we're not timeline optimized, or we're not quality optimized, we can tune that manufacturing process to get better and better. So, kind of back to your original question, what is Crowd? So Crowd is that community for us, right? And our role, really, we see it as we're propping up that community. We're another term. We're democratizing talent and democratizing opportunity, right? And that community is the one that's the set of people that are capable and ready and willing and able to perform for our customers that are out there to solve these problems. Sometimes trivial problems, sometimes really complex problems. And our way of connecting our customers to our community is through that sort of manufacturing-based challenge process.
Gotcha. Now, I got a million questions, and part of me wants to tell the listener, hey, you can't get these answers until you meet with Tony. And one of these questions is we've seen in the past 5 years, we've seen a lot of, I guess you could say, traditional work styles just get obliterated, and a lot of work norms. And so one of the obvious work norms is, and this was kind of dying, but I really think the last year just really closed on this. And that is, hey, company loyalty is pretty dead and it's been replaced by, I would call it skill loyalty or problem loyalty, or literally your ability to prove that you can actually solve this problem. Now, from what you're describing, you've mentioned two different types of projects. One being, hey, I need to get this mobile app done, and then one being, please go find this asteroid in space, something that's unknown. Like, how in the world do we think about this? So, how would you describe, though, the various types of work that you've seen the Crowd handle? Meaning that, should I go replace my CEO with the Crowd right now? Should I, or should I stick it to an innovation team? What kind of work have you seen works best with the Crowd? And then even future proofing, what do you see working well with the Crowd?
For us, it's been anything that we can package up that has a clear set of inputs and a clear outcome that's desired to get out to the Crowd. Where it gets fuzzy and where I think where I do see a lot of companies and talent marketplaces and whatnot struggling to find the right answers with, or experimenting with at least, is the orchestration of work and pulling in the experts, not just to sort of manage the workflow of work, but how do you connect the experts that have the domain experience, maybe in a particular industry? How do you connect somebody with oil and gas background who understands how to build procurement systems for that type of customer, right? That's another type of expertise that I think actually can be pulled from the crowd. Um, but you have to define specific ways that they can engage, right? Just like we've done for Topcoder we focus mostly on the software development lifecycle, different aspects of that, as well as the innovation stuff that you mentioned, like finding comets or asteroids for some projects with NASA. So for us, it's always historically been, can we define something that has a specific outcome? If we can, and what that effectively means to me is we can create the rules of the game that are clear for anybody to come and participate in. Right? So if we've got those rules of the game clear, then we can pull crowd members into it. Or we can broadcast it out there, and people can come and be successful on that. If you get into more of these vague areas, you have to sort of think differently, I think, about how you frame the problem and how you allow people to engage. And there's easy ways to do it. There's many ways to do it. I think a lot of what happens is, by default, it starts to look just like consulting or contracting versus a true crowd style gig, or that interaction like you're thinking of, where they're not loyal to the job necessarily, they're loyal to their skill or to that domain, or whatever it might be. So I think there is this, there are definitely shifts in the way that people, I think, are thinking about company loyalty or their own brand loyalty. And a lot of people talk about their own brand now, and I think that's probably part of what is in the thread that you're thinking about there. But what's been interesting for Topcoder is just being here for being part of the sort of crowdsourcing world for as many years as I have. That's sort of been a norm for me, right, since 2005. Because back to the old is new, right? In the early, when I joined Topcoder in late 2004, 2005, a lot of these topics or concepts weren't really talked about yet. But one of the words that we constantly used was hyper-specialization. And for us, that meant that people are going to get really good, or they want to get really good at a certain thing. And we provided a place for them to come do that when they wanted to, and work, pick and choose the problems that they wanted to work on and get rewarded for that. And also showcase their talent, because they were building up their Topcoder profile and their ratings and their skills. So that helped them then get into maybe a full-time job if that's what they wanted to, or it helped them get to their next gig, or hop to another project on the Topcoder platform, or hop to another crowdsourcing platform where there's another set of opportunities that they can leverage that skill at, which is something that I think is important too. Right? There's a lot of crowdsourcing platforms out there that have a lot of different capabilities and different focus areas, and more. I think they're complementary to each other. I think it's important for there to be this ecosystem of crowd platforms to sort of facilitate what's happening with the way that people work.
So I wonder, this is the question that I usually ask at the end, and I think it might put the bow on this, because when thinking about like future of work, flexible talent, whatever, that enough is a stretch, right? And then you add on that it's a crowd versus an individual, and sometimes the leader's brain is just like, whoa, too much, right? Don't want to deal with it. Now, you have made it very simple in terms of, if you know the rules of the game, then a crowd model can help. Likewise, if there's a known unknown, then the crowd can help. So that's very, very clear. Now, the last question that I have for you, Tony, is how do you recommend leaders get started? And it might be that, hey, take your toughest challenge and just throw it on the platform. It might be the opposite of, hey, read this book and then start to go small. I doubt it's either of those extremes. Definitely not the read a book, right? Because like no leader is going to be like, no, I don't want to do that. But how would
I
you
haven't seen that close a
recommend?
deal yet.
Yeah, yeah. I recommend you read all these books and then come back to us. But how would you recommend, Tony, that our audience gets started? And is the crowd the right word, by the way, Tony? And actually, you know what? A question I do have before that: is this mutually exclusive? Meaning, if I'm looking at a full-time head, full-time hire, a freelancer, or the crowd, can all these happen at once? And then we'll get into that last question.
Yes, is the answer in short. So I think there's probably a demystification of crowd models that is maybe important to talk about a little bit because I think one of the challenges honestly with Topcoder in its early years was convincing people.
Yeah.
Right. It was we were going around trying to sell this concept that we're going to take your project and split it up into pieces and send it around the world, and everything's going to come back together fine and it's all safe and don't worry about it. Right? Which was a completely foreign concept to anybody at that point. Now it is becoming more and more accepted, at least in terms of people know that companies are using crowdsourcing in various forms. So at least there's a little bit more willingness to try it. There's I think a better just foundational understanding that it's a model that can be successful. But to your question about can you have a contractor, a freelancer, an FTE, a crowd, all as all in the same breath, and yes is the answer. And I think it's almost at least for the enterprise type of model that we work with typically, I think it's almost required or recommended. And I think of it as a blended team. To be honest, I try to think very simply, right, and not overcomplicate things. And if I go in and the first thing I start talking about with a new potential customer that hasn't had experience with crowdsourcing, and I try to explain crowdsourcing to them, it's usually a fail, right? Because that doesn't relate to them. They're like, okay, well, I already don't know. I don't trust you already, and now you're telling me, you're giving me the pitch on crowdsourcing. But really, what we're doing, it comes back to simplifying it. And maybe this is me going back to my consulting days. Really, we're not at the end of the day, if you look at it on the surface, we're not really doing anything different in terms of what we're delivering to you than if I came to you and I said, I'm going to come in tomorrow with my 10-person team, and there's going to be a designer, a PM, an architect, some testing people, some engineers, and we're going to go build this thing out. People would expect that certain things are going to happen. There's going to be certain status reports. There's going to be certain milestones. They're going to see a prototype. They might get some design work up front that they're going to be able to have some fun conversations around. Ultimately, they're going to deliver something and they're going to work with your team throughout it to make sure that you've got the right environment requirements and you've got the right integration discussions that are happening and compliance discussions. All of that still has to happen if you're doing crowdsourcing in an enterprise space. So if you remove the fact that there's a different workforce delivering it behind the scenes, right? If I go into a customer, I don't have a whole team of engineers that I'm coming in and naming. I don't have a team of designers. I don't have a team of data scientists. But what I do have are experts in how to deliver software. And we come and we work with you as a customer to deliver that software and be your kind of single point of contact that's an interface to the crowd. Right? So not teaching them how to crowdsource, teaching them basically our process of working with them as a customer, and us becoming part of their blended team. Right? And normally there's a full-time client resource who's some sort of PM or program manager. There's usually a client architect involved. On the Topcoder side, we've got a combination of we have a thin services layer for Topcoder that specializes in crowdsourcing and working with customers. We also have the extension of our Wipro delivery team and consulting services. So we do create this blended team that now helps the customer scale and get access to skills that they didn't have, be able to solve those way out of the box problems like the NASA stories or the lung cancer detection type of challenges. So it enables. access to that without having to wait to build up those teams. But if you look at it, if you sort of just look at an interface level, kind of if you have a coder, right? There's an interface between the client and Topcoder, and we try to simplify that as much as possible. Behind the scenes, there's all sorts of stuff going on, but that's less important as long as you're getting those outcomes back to the customer.
Gotcha. Yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way when I was telling Microsoft executives about my process and a lot of information, and was told, I don't care how you make the sausage, and if you keep telling me, then you'll be fired. And I went, oh, gulp. Okay, that's new to me. But listen, I think
that is the fun part, though. And there's some level of that is important to build trust. Because you still need to gain that trust, and sometimes it's trust through they're going to give you a little bit of room to run, and they're going to see how you deliver. But there's also a bit of trust in saying this is the parts of our process that ensure things like quality and timeline and cost and security, the things that we know around people's minds.
So here's the bow. You ready? So one of the first things you said was you need to be close to your customer instead of just building for the sake of building. And so that is the bow, and coming all around this, right? Whether you are a platform leader like yourself, whether you're the customer, whatever it is, and as crazy as AI gets, if you're just building AI for the sake of AI, good luck. Just like if you're building, the blockchain just for the sake of the blockchain, good luck. But if you're close to your customer, then you're building for that. And it doesn't matter whether it's AI, blockchain, or whatever. It doesn't matter whether it's crowd, freelance, full-time, whatever. It's about the end problem. So we're going to wrap it up there. The last question I have for you is, on Long Island, where was the best cannoli and pizza? And because selfishly, for all of our listeners, if you're within a 4-hour drive, you better drive to there. But so give us the best cannoli and pizza rec, and then I will let you hop.
The best pizza is probably an easy one for me. Growing up, I had a friend in high school who his family owned the local pizzeria. So it was Roma Pizza in Merrick, Long Island. So they were really, really good. Cannolis, I'd have to think of some good names. So there was a Vincent's Bakery, but I don't think that's there anymore. Most of the cannolis, to be honest, my parents go to Queens and pick them up. And I'm blanking on the name, but I will get that name to you, and hopefully somehow you can incorporate that into
I will say
content.
Boston has better cannolis than New York. I know.
Mike's cannolis they're not like the real cannolis. They're good.
Oh, here we go, Tony. The real cannolis. They're delicious. At least you're not mentioning modern, so at least you know enough to say Mike's not modern. Listen, Tony, first of many, my friend, and for all you out there, go reach out to Tony. JF. Oh God, it's end of day, Tony.
It's a hard one.
Go reach out to him on LinkedIn. Tony, I cannot wait for this to go live. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Thanks, man. It was fun.